Not all webinars invite you to just interrupt the speaker, but you're very welcome to interrupt it with a question. If there is a whole conversation going, use your hand. But don't wait for me to realize somebody has a hand. After the presentation, after the video, after the webinar, we will put this video on the webpage for people to go back and check it. This will take a few hours probably before it can be uploaded. And we will also make this PowerPoint available as a PDF. Our next webinar is in January and will focus a lot more on how to fill in the online application format and go into answering all kinds of questions you might have for the rules and for the budgeting and for the expectations of the consortium, for instance. So these are the most relevant links and resources for this call. The call homepage with the call text, obviously, and also the eligibility requirements are there. The Insights application portal is operated by Nordforsk, our colleagues in Nordic Research, and all kinds of calls are available there. So therefore, we also have a direct link to the application here to make sure you have the right one. And then the bioenergy report available on Nordic Forest Research webpage is the direct background for this call. So it's a good read. This is what we're going to cover today. The purpose and background of the call, some exercises to get familiar with some of the more unusual requirements of this call, like the thematics and the partnership rules, and budget rules, timeline, and other opportunities for funding in 2025, just since we have your attention. We are 10 people now, so we will just go on. Remember to speak up if you have a question. Don't hold it back. So we will start with a short check-in guide. Give us your name and tell us where you are today. I will probably call your names so that we have an order to speak. Like, my name is Lisa Nilsson. I'm sitting in Vasa in Finland right now. But I work at Nordic Energy Research as a senior advisor. So Anna Margrethe Cornelius, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Anna Margrethe. I'm based in Reykjavik, Iceland, and I work for Epla Consulting Engineers.
Thank you. Anna Meisner.
Yes, hi, I'm Anna Meisner Jensen. I work as a project coordinator for Nordic Forest Research, and I'm located in the southern Sweden. Thank you.
Kasper Eidsbrotten.
Good morning. My name is Kasper Eidsbrotten. I work as a project developer for ST1 Biocraft, working with biogas here in Oslo, Norway.
Oh, you're in Oslo. Funny, because I'm in Finland. ST1. Yes. Anders Eriksson.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anders Eriksson. I'm located in Uppsala, Sweden. I work as a researcher at Skogforsk, the Forestry Research Institute, Sweden. Nice to meet you all.
Mohammed Ostadi.
Hi, I'm Mohammed. I'm an assistant professor at Aalborg University in Denmark. I'm sitting in Esbjerg campus, south of Denmark.
Welcome.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, Preben Bier.
Yeah, my name's Preben, and I work at Bier, so my own consultancy, project developer, technology developer, and chairman of IDA Energi, the Danish Association of Engineers.
Thank you. And Tommy Lindström.
Good morning. I'm Tommy Lindström, project manager at the Energy Agency for Southern Sweden. Just finished a big biogas project with the Baltic partners.
Cool. Thank you. We will see if somebody else shows up or during the meeting, but the real purpose of this webinar is not to have a lot of participants, but to have a good discussion and to record this video for others to check the call. So Betsy?
Yeah, and then it's me, Betty Sogard, and I am located in Oslo, here at Nordic Energy Research. And Nordic Energy Research is an institution under the Nordic Council of Ministers, and a central task we have is provide knowledge bases, analysis, and studies that can be used as a basis for political decision making and government cooperation. We also found collaborative energy research and mobility projects and networks, and facilitate intergovernmental energy cooperation. So that is us.
Thank you. And Anna again.
Yes, just a short introduction to Nordic Forest Research, also called the SNS. We also are a part of the Nordic Council of Ministers, a cooperation body financed by the Council, and we work to promote and enhance the Nordic forest research to increase the synergy at a Nordic level, and we even try to link research with policy. One of our projects is this bioeconomy program, which you will hear a little bit more about, we are coordinating this from SNS, but it's also directly funded by the Nordic Council of Ministers, and where we're trying to increase growth and green transition in the rural areas of the Nordic and Baltic region. And this bioenergy report, which you saw the link to before, is produced under this program, and we even had other activities coupled to bioenergy. Thank you.
Thank you. So the background for this call comes directly from this joint reporting that was done with SNS and the Bioeconomy Program under SNS and Nordic Energy Research. It's a good read. It had some very clear recommendations to cooperate more, to give more policy advice, and also have the actors, the stakeholders of Nordic bioenergy working more together in networking, so and including the Baltics, of course. So this call was created also because Nordic Energy Research had a very big call for funding a year ago called Nordic Grant Solutions, and there were like 5 or 6 proposals that were based on bioenergy resources, and all of them were good research, but all of them also failed from the evaluators saying that they don't know if their resource is actually green. They don't know if it's what kind of competition they're in, how will they have the resource, is the LCA for that resource sustainable? So all of this bioenergy projects were not funded in that round of call, and it, together with the bioenergy report, it fostered the idea of having the stakeholders of the bioenergy value chains actually work better together to find out at least on what to agree to disagree, where are the problems, but also where are the most important needs for new research. So we wish to fund strong partnerships that cooperate to identify common ground for common challenges, and maybe also even find recommendations for solutions for the sustainable use of biomass for energy purposes. The overriding idea behind the call is that the bioeconomy comes first, and then all waste products should not be wasted, but should be turned into bioenergy. That is like the main idea. So maybe you have other ideas, and we would like to hear about it. The program is looking at improved uptake of local and regional biogenic carbon for energy purposes, waste streams from bioeconomic value chains, yes, maybe build some new competence fields, new cooperation fields for biomass-based value chains, maybe bring new partnerships who might lead to new solutions. across countries and across local showstoppers, that one country has a showstopper for permissions or taxation of a waste stream. Others don't have this showstopper, and this might lead to some recommendations for policy change. Also, maybe such a partnership could lead to a better recommendation for priorities in land use, or priorities in use of fertilizer, priorities in research efforts to make a clearer LCA for new biomass types. There are so many things it could be. It's up to you as applicants. Point is to build a stronger Nordic models and data sets so that we have a better basis for, so we know we have, we hope to create some sort of clarity through your projects. What do we agree on? What do we agree to disagree on? And what is the research needs and the policy potentials in the biomass sector for energy purposes, and recommend all these. Therefore, there is also, at the end of the program, there is a joint workshop, public workshop in October, to sort of stack all the work together and have a look at the projects, what they have led to. This is, we're nearing the first exercise to engage all of you online. What is included in the scope of the call? All of these words are included, and many more. You might recognize your own interest somewhere here. Biomass is a lot about a battle for resources. We were visiting LKAB in northern Sweden. They produce steel, and they're going to transform their process. They have today, they have 10% of the Swedish CO2 emissions from their current production of steel. And they're switching it around so that in 3 years they will have a zero carbon emission steel production. And the answer for them is to use biomass, and they're going to need all of the available biomass of Sweden to do this. Obviously, that's a problem when all other companies also say, well, we will make e-fuels, we will use all the biomass available. Well, we will make heating and electricity, we will use all the biomass available. Other people say we will have biodiversity, we will have forestry, we will have untouched forests, we will use all the land available. So how do we do this? One way would be to not waste side streams from a more primary economical industrial use of biomass, like the waste stream from the paper industry could be optimized in its use. For instance, any questions so far? So then I think we will go straight to the first exercise.
Yes, and if everybody looks at the chat, oh wait, I think maybe Kasper Eidsbråten is writing. Should we maybe just wait for him, what he has to say? Maybe he has a question for the previous slide, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it to go back for a second.
In
Go
the
ahead with
meanwhile,
the question.
yeah. He says,
What
what
does it say?
company, yeah, sorry, take it, Lisa.
What company was going to use the biomass in car production? Oh, I don't think it was car production. Oh, iron production. LKAB, they produce iron from the Kiruna mine in Luleå, Kiruna in Sweden.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I'm trying to get my slide to go one step back, which obviously I'm not allowed to do. So Betsy, if you go ahead and share your screen, I will fix my slide.
I can. And in the meanwhile, can everybody look at the chat where I write a link for you here? If everybody can go to menti.com, I will provide a code for you. And the code is here. I will just share my screen. 1 second. Here. So if everybody can write the code 72 58 65 and then 5, you will come into this slide. Then you can write I think up to 3 words. And what kind of words do you think represents your interest in bioenergy value chain? So we will just wait until people have written some more words.
Just screen free. Oh, there we go. Definitely the word energy security. Yeah.
Hydrogen.
Yes.
Biofuel is also mentioned a couple of times.
Yes. Cascading synergies. That's obviously what this call is about for sure. Circularity, yes. Bio CO2, clearly. Do we need a certificate administration, or is there a better way, easier way to do it? Good questions. Lots of questions for these words. Industrial symbiosis, clearly. This actually happens in a lot of places, but they don't always declare it very much. I learned another inspiration behind this call was a hydrogen conference in the Vedgas conference in Sweden, one annual one, where there were a lot of chemical industry representatives from Stenungsund area, and they said we have symbiosis. Everybody provides waste streams to the neighbors, but we don't. It's not highlighted very much. But that's a clear recycling of useful waste. Waste as a resource, yes. Hyperthermophiles. That's a word I need to have an explanation for. Who wrote that? Can you tell us what you wrote? Why you wrote it?
I can't see any hands while I'm sharing. Do you see any hands raising, Lisa?
No. Who wrote hyperthermophiles? I will write in the chat. So whoever wrote that nice word, please explain what it is by telling us what it is. Don't write it. It's easier to tell. CO2 from cement to fuel, yes. Well, if the CO2 from cement, do you mean cement production? Whoever wrote that, because then
yes, I meant cement production, because I don't know if it's considered a renewable fuel or what kind of credits will we get if we produce fuel from CO2 that is produced from cement production.
Well, what is the original source of that CO2?
During it's inherent in the process, the calcium carbonate ore, when they want to convert it to calcium oxide, then
I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Technically, that calcium carbonate that forms the CO2 is comes from a geological process. So even though the CO2 originally in ancient times was from biomass, from like say shells of sea animals, sea creatures, it has undergone a geological process. So technically, it's not a biomass. Biomasses would be this year or perennials, but not when it forms into a peat, it starts having a geological process. At some point, it is labeled brown coal or other sources of CO2. The natural gas in the permafrost is also a result of biomass, but from a geological process. So technically, it's not biomass. I think you should argue that in an application and be part of the value chain where it makes sense.
Right.
Because we are at the edge of, do we waste it just because it's at the edge of a source? Clearly CO2, carbon from coal and gas and oil is not biogenic, and maybe we need to be able to monitor this in the value streams. If it has a higher value, it should maybe also be reflected. But definitely labeling is important so that the consumers can build trust in the distinctions.
The CO2 from calcination process is not labeled biogenic.
No.
So Aalborg Portland, for instance, will half of their CO2 emission is from the calcination process. The other half is from the fuel. So they'll change the fuel to reduce the fossil CO2 emission, but the rest they'll have to capture, and that's what they're doing now.
Yes.
And they're not allowed to use that CO2 for a refundable purpose, for instance, on a longer.
But for this call, the interest of being in the call would be to be able to monitor and label or declare what type of CO2 is this. That could be an interest. But yeah, it's not biomass or biogenic carbon. And somebody wrote EL, I don't see who that is, but the letters EL wrote, hypothermophiles are bacteria that thrive at extreme temperatures and can be used as pre-treatment to enhance biogas production. That's a cool technology. Never heard of that. I heard of other cool technologies in Linköping University in Middle Sweden. They can use the waste products from the paper industry to create batteries. That's a cool bioeconomy use. And then they must have a waste stream, and that might go into energy in a different way. So, any more words? Does somebody wish to explain one of the words they wrote here? Then just go ahead. Somebody wrote advanced biofuels. Is that like e-fuels for transportation?
Well, advanced biofuels is like from direct thermal liquefaction, like pyrolysis or hydrothermal liquefaction.
It's definitely inside the scope of the call.
Yeah, so second generation or third generation biofuels.
Yes. BECCS, yes. Could be. Who wrote BECCS? Maybe you should explain what you mean. So nobody remembered they wrote BECCS. But clearly carbon capture storage in my world, and you are very free to not listen to me here, but in my world, carbon capture and storage is useful if we know that the source is a fossil, but maybe if we know that the source is biogenic, it has a higher value to be put back into e-fuels or advanced biofuels in general. It's to be considered. So BECCS says if probably this is also related to transportation distance, also something to consider.
Yeah. It's probably biogenic carbon capture and storage. So
yes,
which could be, for instance, biochar.
Yes. So then there's a different value chain and a different bioeconomy starting point exactly. Or middle point, maybe actually. So yeah, all of this is inside the scope of the call. Ein, Doyer, you wrote, you put a link here. Can you explain your link? Oh, it's the BECCS explanation, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yes, great. Okay, anybody else want to add something? I think Betsy is taking a screenshot of this, and we will put it in the PowerPoint as a result of this discussion. So this project, this call for proposals is unusual in several details of the call. One of the most important details is that we expect very complex, large partnerships across all countries. So what do we mean by that, and why is this? Because it's the budget available. How do I go back? There we go. The budget available is only 1 million Norwegian kroner per project. That's not a lot of money, but then again, it's a short project. We need the partnerships to cover all meaningful actors in your value chain and all meaningful stakeholders in your value chain. So maybe they're not directly related to those who have a bioeconomy, who have a product that they use, create a waste stream that is somebody else's raw material, and so on, which is the value chain itself. But also people who oppose this use or who are in a competition for this biomass would be relevant stakeholders in your partnership. So normally, if you have, let's say you have a biogas-based value chain or some partners in the biogas sector, you would normally only be funded if there is a complementarity of roles, so that, oh, you have a biogas producer from one country, from Sweden, then it would be unusual to also have a partner from Denmark and Norway and Latvia. But in this case, it would make a lot of sense to cover more country, more rules, to make sure that the input, oh, we have the same rule, oh, we have a completely different regulation in our country and it works like this, is much more meaningful in this in this project. Doesn't mean that everybody will have a high level of hours and input in the project, but everybody is being would be contributing to the understanding and have a more meaningful understanding of the issues within that value chain. So that's one thing. So clearly, evaluators will wonder why somebody is missing. If there is a paper industry project and no Swedish partners or Finnish partners, everybody will be, why are they not here? Obviously, paper industry screams Sweden and Finland. So don't leave somebody out in your partnership. It's better to have both Sweden and Finland, for if it's paper industry that is your main value chain concept. Any questions for this? Not always. It's not always possible to have the partners. Maybe the company that you would have liked in the partnership say, well, we will not commit to the partnership, but we will follow your project with interest. Well, that's fine. They can be submitting a letter of interest as an observer that will support your partnership, even though they are not engaging in the project team directly and will not sit in project meetings and will not be writing a report with you. They might say, we are observers and we will promise to answer questions or participate in some activity inside the project, but we will then go back home. So that's a great way to engage companies that are not pertinent to the operation of the project. You could also say, we didn't successfully find a useful stakeholder group for local citizens near the fish farm that we have as a biomass resource. But we will engage them in a local town hall meeting, and we will do it this way as an activity in the project. So you can explain if a relevant partner type is not inside the partnership, maybe there are other ways to expect to engage this type of stakeholder. And then I wrote engage your frenemies, and it means friends and friendly enemies, people who have different opinions from your own, who have a different vision for agriculture, who have a different vision for the use of biomass resources of different types, who wants everything to be nature capital and or grow forest everywhere. But obviously they also know this will not work. So maybe you disagree on overriding mission and vision for biomass or for biodiversity, but that you still are, both sides will be deeply invested in getting the best out of the biomass and the nature. So try to engage people you normally disagree with, but if they are relevant to your value chain. Any questions for this? Oh, there are several hands. So
Yeah.
ND, who's that? Oh, Gitte Davidson, you're ND. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm in. Yeah. So you're saying that we can have some kind of secondary partners or stakeholders that are not directly partners if they're relevant somehow.
Yes.
And
partner, the partner is part of the partnership and probably will have some sort of payment for their wages, time, unless they're self-funded. But they are also going to be part of the project consortium and project meetings. But an observer doesn't receive any funding, but they promise to support with something specific that is relevant for the project. I will provide this specific input. They write that in their letter of interest, and this is uploaded in the application portal.
Yeah, and then there was another thing. So you say that if the regulation in the different countries, Nordic countries, are kind of affecting the value chain, then this could be a reason to take more countries in or more partners in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and probably a good idea. Yes. Anna Margrethe.
Thank you. I had a question on, as this is a Nordic Baltic call specifically, do you have obviously then it would be preferable to involve all of the Nordic countries and all of the Baltic countries?
Yes.
But is there a cutoff? Like,
nope.
No. So basically, please involve as many as you can. Okay.
Yes, this will have a specific value when the evaluators read the proposal. But remember, there are many roles.
Yes.
So you organize, optimize, organize how to do this. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And there's also a freedom of choice for project leader as long as they are a research organization. They don't have to be from one specific or some specific of these eight countries here. Is it 8? Help me count. Greenland, Iceland, Faroe Islands, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland. Comes out as 10, doesn't it? Poland, 11. 11 countries that could be project leaders as long as they're research organizations. Yes. This is another aid for explaining your consortium. The partnership is to use the pentahelix approach. Most people have heard of triple helix, which is government, industry, and research. And they are the normal actors in most research projects with public funding. But the pentahelix also includes, it splits government organizations to mean municipalities, governments, departments of energy, employees, TSOs, other public governance organizations. And then the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations, would be interest groups, but organized, such as Ida Energi, which is the Danish Association of Engineers within energy, or Greenpeace, or other like organizations of that type, large organizations, where citizens are not normally organized very well. They are local stakeholders typically, but they can also be organized, but in a much smaller way than the NGOs. We will get back to that, how this is. All 5 types should preferably be represented in your partnership, and if they're not directly partners, explain how you engage them, relevant ones, of course. Research organizations are normally universities, but it can also be like SINTEF or Teknologisk Institut. Energiforsk in Stockholm would be a research organization also, Chalmers. Industrial companies will be any private business, any consultancy that is not a research organization. I guess they can be both. Public governance, municipalities, government departments, publicly owned organizations, grid companies, heat and power stations with public ownership go in there. If they're private ownership, then they are industrial companies. So sometimes you would be a little bit fluid in which type you are. So explain your type in the proposal. Non-governmental organizations, interest groups, industry organizations, influencers organized well. That would be this type of partner. And then the citizens. Any more questions? So this graphics was also on the call page. What does it mean? It's a little bit, it's confusing maybe, but this is a confusing value chain setup. Each black line is some sort of a value chain. It intersects with other biomass value chains many places. So the yellow dots are like these value chains, and the partners have some specific issues, and here they cross another value chain when they might be competing for some resources. So they deal with this. Within the partnership, we point out something that it needs extra focus from our value chain point of view. And then sometimes everybody intersects, many value chains intersect in the blue dots. And everybody has an interest that, and probably there will be competing interests, but at least everybody agrees that this is relevant and important to do more work with. And that will, the idea is that we will hear all this information from the projects and investigate it further to say, should we design a call that covers these areas? What would be interesting to have as a scope of that call? So any questions here? It could also be that it's not a research issue, but a policy issue. That is also going to be interesting to have it highlighted somehow and discussed and put it in the open so that we can talk about it. That's the first step in solving any problem. That's so that the application would probably point out where you think these yellow and blue dots will be, but then explain your logic, your value chain, and your partnership also, and how you hope to solve or approach these problems in your project. So we have a new Mentimeter coming up. This is just a guide to help you to understand who am I and how should I present myself in this next Mentimeter. So use the pentahelix approach. Right, in the chat you can write now if you feel confident to share your call or your company name, your email and your company name. You can write it in the chat, but be aware that it will be made available online. So GDPR is accepted in this case, that is, as long as this video will be online, your email and company name will be online. We will think about yourself. Am I an industry association? What would be my organization's name? And what do we work with? For instance, example here, we work with policy. Okay, or it could be we work with land use. Private businesses, what's your company name and what is it does in the biomass value chain? Well, this one is a green kale productions. They make gas, as an example, biogas. If you're a research institution, write that, and then university of whatever name is the university, and what type of focus your institute has. If you're a governmental organization, be specific. Where is your, are you a local planning department of a municipality, or what is it? And citizens. Deling KDK is actually an existing organization, which is clearly a citizens group. It's you share the ownership of a cow for one cow growing season. So 8 people, 8 families share one cow, and then they share the cow when it's slaughtered at the end of the year. This exists, and they have a local interest. Just as an example of what type of local organizations are not an organization, NGO. Right. So you can do this in the chat, but we also have Betty will introduce you to this Mentimeter.
Why is the last one not an NGO? If it's an organization and it's non-governmental, if they organize themselves formally in an organization.
In this case, because they're Danish, they have an organization and a chairman and an annual meeting, a general assembly. So technically they are an NGO, but they're just very small and local. In other countries, they might not be an NGO, but just a local group. So everything in all small interest groups in Denmark are also organized as NGOs, except one relevant for this is Stop Spild af Mad, Stop Wasting Food. It's not an organization. It's organized as a web page and a list of contacts, but it's not an organization. So that's fully.
It's an initiative.
Citizens.
Yes.
Yes. So they're fully just citizens. Yeah. So they're not an NGO, but they have political impact anyway. And there are others similar to that. So I see people writing in the chat already. That's great. So.
And in the meanwhile, the others can go back to menti.com with a new code this time. And it is 88 29 98 2. So, and this time you will get a box with a free writing, I think up to 200 signs or letters. Yeah.
So I think, do you want to share the screen if words are beginning to appear? Then go ahead.
I'm on my way here. Yeah. Yes. Here, I think you all will see my screen now. Is it correct?
Yes.
There. Perfect. You just have to wait for people to write their responses.
So in the chat, you write, who are we? How do you contact me? And in the Mentimeter, you look more at what are we looking for? What kind of partners would you probably need? The industry partners. Yeah. You're allowed to write your company name, and then we are looking for industry partners, so that an industry partner say, okay, what type of industry partners? Well, somebody in the paper industry sector, or somebody in transportation of waste materials, or whatever it is. Clearly, hydrogen was also a word earlier, and when we talk hydrogen, we mean green hydrogen. based on power to X from renewable energy sources, or possibly hydrogen created in a biomass-based process, which is totally possible. Just as a curiosity, 25 years ago, I saw an American patent for a PV-shaped panel with solar input and an output, but instead of producing electricity, they directly produced hydrogen. Cool. Based on a biomass algae process inside the panel. Many things are possible. But obviously, yeah, clean hydrogen and biocarbon, yeah, e-fuels. Obviously, this is how you make green e-fuels, green transportation fuels, or other purposes of e-fuels. I see biogas, I see forestry, consultancy with circularity and forestry. Yes. I see life cycle assessment. Yes. Biorefinery products. Yes. Where would you get your resources when you have all these business concepts that use biomass waste or biomass resources for input? How there will be nobody has an overview of how much biomass is expected to be used in this planning, but I think it's like 10 times the available biomass right now. Just my guess. Feel free to say something else. It would also be interesting to know if we have this biomass, and that obviously there's a limitation on transportation distance. We shouldn't waste anything because we need all of it. What will be the value of the biomass? How do you know that it does not attract cheating from other sources because it maybe has a higher value? All of this is not known. So how do we address all of these issues and create green transition businesses and security of supply and storage options also? Plasma processing laboratory. Biomass conversion in the plasma environment. I have never heard of that. That sounds interesting. Creativity is highly appreciated here, in the sense that new bioeconomical actors might change the value and the use of some biomass streams. Yes, policy expertise is, you're seeking that, yes. Be aware if you have a policy question in your proposal that currently the details of the laws and regulations are quite different from country to country. The minimum number of partners required to apply. I will get to that in the next few slides. Good question. The quick answer is a minimum of 3 countries, meaning a minimum of 3 partners. Well, if you're only 3 partners, you have to explain why you're not 5 partners. I think we will leave the Mentimeter operating so you can keep writing in it, and then we will go back to share the main presentation. So you can keep writing both in the chat and in the Mentimeter for a while. So here we are. I'm wondering why it doesn't go on. Do you see a full screen?
Yes.
Okay, just my screen was different this time. Anyway, Nordic Baltic added value is also something you need to explain in the proposal. With added value, we mean that the solutions and the work comes to Nordic Baltic applied added value by having a better impact, a more wider reaching policy recommendation, and better than the individual countries doing this by themselves. So it's a lot like the passport union in the Nordics. You cannot have one country having a passport union with the neighbors. You need all the countries to agree on the passport union. This is added value. So in this case, it would be that to be able to transport biomass waste streams across the borders with simple rules would mean a higher value overall, most likely. Maybe you can argue it's wrong. I don't know, but probably that would be a better value for a better market for some of these products if there were common rules across borders for how to transport. That's a possibility. It could be other rules that what is defined an e-fuel in one country should have the same definition in the next country. That would be quite useful. Probably this will happen because it's a new field. But to avoid mistakes and to avoid other rules in one country because they weren't paying attention and didn't listen to the advice, that would be a problem for that country to have a different definition of e-fuels. Just as an example of what that would be. Added value means that cooperation across the research competencies in the different countries has added value because you reach critical mass even from a smaller field of research effort. You have a critical mass by joining forces with the neighboring countries' research groups. This is also an example of added value. So in the application, you're required to write shortly what is the added value that is the primary added value of our proposal. Then you're also required to write in a Scandinavian language, Danish, Norwegian, Swedish. You choose one to write the short summary of the project. You know, you're always writing a short summary in English and then the long description of the proposal content. And this short summary we would like in the Scandinavian language also because an obvious added value is that people outside the project know what you're doing and learn the words. Oh, these words are important when we look at biomass. What is that? What would that be in Norwegian? Well, we forgot to translate it. So to make everybody start using the words in a Nordic Scandinavian language in this case, because that reaches more people. So and also in the end, your report has to be high. The report will probably be in English, but to be available for people who don't have a Scandinavian language. But the summary and the short version of the report must also be in Scandinavian language to be accessible for citizens and other businesses, other policymakers outside of the project. Any questions for this? Oh, you get the little video here of wind power and biomass. Facts about the call. It's open now. You can follow this link and start writing your application. And you probably, if you haven't applied before in this portal, you have to start registering yourself as a user of the portal. The call closes in January 29th at 1 o'clock, I believe. If you submit your proposal until the deadline, you can go back in and edit. So if you wait to submit until 15 minutes before the deadline, you might have technical issues, and that would be sad. So submit a little earlier. If you then have issues and cannot fix something or upload something, contact us and we will help you. Tommy?
Yes, finally on the train. It was complicated following the meeting, but just a quick question. Is it possible to make a small PIF as you do in direct projects? Well, we can discuss and check the content if it fits all the requirements.
Or you mean ask if your proposal is in line before the deadline?
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Well, the questions that we get asked until the deadline, we are required to publicize the answer so that others with a similar... Somebody should mute. Somebody should mute their microphone. Oh, it's the train. It's Tommy's train, right? We are required to publicize the answers for others so that others with similar questions will know, yes, this is in accordance, or this would be an issue. But you're allowed to ask a question by email or calling us. But if it's a general question, we are required to publicize the general answer. So, yes. This is the portal again. The project has a maximum of 8 months. It must begin before the 1st of April and finish before the end of November 25. This is very short and fast. There's a minimum applied for budget of 1 million Norwegian kroner. We have a true common pot of 4 million Norwegian kroner available. A true common pot means that the two funders put all the money into the same pot. So there is no preference of participants from a specific country with this amount of budget or this amount of budget for some other country, like there might be in some virtual common pots. Probably this means that 4 projects will be funded, but if projects are smaller, who knows, it might be 5 projects funded. The minimum requirement is 3 countries in the consortium. There's also the requirement of a pentahelix approach. So if you can explain how you will engage 2 of those 5 pentahelix types, you can have 3 partners from each country and have an eligible consortium. This will be unusual. And the experts will have to see a really good reason when they evaluate this proposal. Why didn't you have more partners in more countries? But this depends totally on the focus, on the biomass type of the value chain itself. It could be this is completely the right proposal, the right partnership for this specific focus. Then you of course have to argue why this specific focus needs to have one of these funding spots. Is it a very, very narrow scope that very, very few businesses in the future will work with? Or is this an up and coming, fast growing industry that is just very new? That could be a good argument. Tommy, again, yes?
Yes, a budget related question. Should the
Yes.
weight be on the main partner, or should it be equally distributed among partners? Should it be funding available for travel or participating at conferences, or is it only working hours that are foreseen?
I will go to that on the next slide. So those are all the relevant questions. But you decide what is necessary for your partnership and for your activities. Just explain it. Both if it's completely equal, explain that, or if it's very offset to one side, explain that. Anything can be explained because this is so specific for each different type of value chain. There is a mandatory workshop in October 25 that we will inform the world about when we get closer. All the projects will have to participate in this workshop and provide input for the workshop, these are our recommendations, these are our issues, and then we will have a look at all of that. And then, yeah, thank you, Anna Margrethe. So, Preben, you have a hand?
Yes. If the workshop in October is mandatory, maybe
Yes.
you could announce the date or at least a week in good time in advance. And
Well, the issue is that we hope to have it in the Landstinget-salen in the Folketinget in Denmark, in Copenhagen. And probably Denmark will have a general election just before. So we are a little unsure if this will actually work. Also, if it's in October, there are week 41, 42, and 43, and 44 are all vacation weeks in different countries. So we're going to pick one.
why do you have it in October then?
Because the projects need to have results.
In October, exactly in October?
Yeah, because then in November you finalize your reports and hand in the final reporting and maybe summarize the discussions that was relevant to your project results from the October workshop. So yes, Probably it will be week 42 because that's the Danish vacation week, so we'll just take that on us. Because then maybe also the meeting room will be available.
Yes, it's a good point.
So that's most likely.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that the whole partnership has to put travel budget into the consortium to be at this workshop, but somebody must be there from the partnership in the October workshop. So somebody has to have a travel budget in the application to be there, if that makes sense. Eligibility rules. Well, number of countries, clearly. The project leader must come from a research performing organization. If you are in doubt, if you are a research performing organization, to fulfill this rule, you can email us in advance and ask to make it clear. Just to not be ineligible after deadline, because then it's too late to switch to another project leader. So you should clarify that upfront if you are in doubt. If you're a university, you're clearly a research performing organization. The project leader doesn't have to be a senior researcher. It's fine to be employed at this university research organization, whatever. So you can also be a young graduate who are now employed at this organization. That's fine. You describe your scope, obviously. You have to be in scope from your description of your project. So if the idea is to, let me give you an example of something that is on the edge of scope. If you want to use the natural gas formed from the melting of the permafrost, it's technically not biomass, and so not in scope. But if you're looking at it in connection with something else, as a part of the discussion that is relevant for your biomass resource, maybe your biomass resource is a landfill gas from a biomass landfill, then you are in scope again, and it could be interesting to have a look at, and just to have the volume look, for instance, or the CO2 impact look. The technology will be equally applicable for this solution, even though that is not in the scope of the call, but we are looking at it anyway, because why not? Then you can bring yourself into scope by making sure you're in scope, if that makes sense. You have to have a pentahelix if it's not in the partnership. You have to explain that how your partnership, full partners, how they fit in the pentahelix approach. As I said before, if you don't have the full pentahelix, or you have other partners you want to engage, other stakeholders you want to engage, explain that. In our workshop in July, we will engage local citizens to fulfill this requirement, but also because we need to hear their opinion, which is obviously why you're engaging them. You have something to ask with them, something to answer. And another new thing is the de minimis declaration. The funding is 100% funding for researchers. Research performing institutions will get 100% of the funding they ask, including a reasonable overhead for universities and anybody. But if you're a private organization of any of the other kinds and you want budget for wages or for traveling or something, we have to follow the de minimis declaration rule. So an organization can only receive 200,000 euros over a 3-year period as de minimis, as legal state aid. Small organizations always know how much they have received in de minimis funding because they're small, they have an overview. But if you are a subsidiary of a large company, this declaration comes from the large company, not from yourself. So if it's ST1 that has a local small company that looks at e-fuels and is not yet a large company, then it's the large company's de minimis declaration that we need. So for some organizations that have large corporations behind them, it's a lot easier to just be self-funded. The percentage for other costs, whatever you can argue is what you put there. If you meant overhead, it's a reasonable overhead. It's normally 40–50% is an overhead. there is the de minimis declaration has to be uploaded before the deadline is part of the proposal. This is to shorten the time to activation of the funded projects, to make sure they don't waste time trying to find this declaration to know if they're still eligible after the fact, so to do it up front. Also, we need a preliminary consortium agreement. There's a lot of info in the link and also info online in the application portal itself. Also to shorten time, because to have a consortium agreement with a lot of partners who don't normally agree with each other, if you have a great partnership where everybody are competing for the same resources and the same ideas, maybe they will also take time having a consortium agreement where the lawyers behind it will agree. So we need an upfront preliminary agreement so that we don't waste 8 months of this before the project can start, and then it's all over already. Does that make sense, or is there a question here? It's only an 8-month project. It will create a lot of foreground knowledge. It will not create research results at all, but it will create ideas. Gender equality is a requirement of the call, because this is a requirement of the Nordic Council of Ministers, and it makes a lot of sense. But there needs to be a gender balance in the partnership, in the named people of the partnership. And what do we mean by that? We mean that a minimum of 40% are either male or female, and that's it, because that means we don't require everybody to declare themselves as male or female. Just that 40% have to be declared, say, I'm female, 40% have to say I'm male. The last 20% can be whatever they like, without being forced to declare something. Any questions for that? We also have, Betsy, maybe you can explain more the hjemsteltheads policy.
Yeah, if you want to read more about our policy here at the Nordic Energy Research, you can find it in Scandinavian at our website. I can also show you 1 second. Just here, if you can see my screen share. Then you will have to go to nordicenergyresearch.org here, and then you will press the theme here, about us. And down here, you can read all our policies that are public. You can find it here. And we are working on, I think, on publishing it in English. But in the meanwhile, use ChatGPT or Google Translate to translate the info if you're not a Scandinavian speaker. Yeah.
Basically, this type of information will help you in creating, organizing and setting up the content of your project. So is there a way to engage this type of citizen, this type of age group? Is there a better way to engage people who live in remote regions? So have a look at that. Budget rules. I saw a question in the chat. Let's jump to that first.
And then I also think Git has.
Yeah, Tommy asked. Tommy asked in the chat. Actual working hourly costs of fixed rate like in Interreg. This is actual working hourly costs, including social costs. Overhead is whatever you reasonable can argue. Normally 40, 50%, 100% is probably not going to fit inside the budget anyway. 8 months and 1 million Norwegian kroner is not enough for substantial research work. Absolutely right. This is not doing the research. This is agreeing on the most critical research to be done and recommending it and why it should be done, so that we can find real money for future calls where you can apply for that. Obviously, you need probably a lot more money to do the actual research, but to argue why this research is necessary, I know that the Danish energy funding program EUDP, I know the Swedish SVEA, and obviously the Norwegian funding agencies, all of the Nordic funding agencies are looking more at bioenergy right now, so they might take interest and take notes from your recommendations and say, wow, we need to prioritize these projects in our next round also. Who knows, right? So you have the potential to influence the direction of funding. There's a big interest in Greenland for CO2 uptake into the rock and to use that as fertilizer and to improve the soil quality and also to grow algae in the ocean outside of the coast of Greenland. There are many different ideas up and running. Yeah, to establish connections is a direct purpose of the call also. Gitte, you have a question?
Yes, it's about it's 100% for the research partners, and what
Yes.
about not
well
research partners?
well that can be 100% as long as it's less than the 200,000 euro, which is obviously way more than the budget. So it's as the de minimis cover. If your need as a private organization is to get 100,000 Norwegian kroner for travels and wages and coffee, then this is way within the limit of the de minimis. So you get the 100% of what you ask for. There's another rule. It says that there has to be a minimum of 10% in-kind contribution overall for the partnership. This includes observers. So if an observer says, we will just be observers, but we are happy to provide all the coffee and meeting rooms needed for this project and maybe pay some travel costs, we declare it directly in the text of our letter of interest that is uploaded. We are going to be observers. We will provide these things, solutions, questions, answers, input, data, coffee, and this has a value of 100,000 Norwegian kroner. That's 10% in-kind contribution. If you have a non-country participant, let's say you have a Scottish participant or a Dutch participant or a Greek participant or whatever, they will be observers. They can also be partners if they're 100% self-funded, but they can also be observers. And everything they contribute will be in kind. So the minimum 10% in-kind contribution is not that hard to reach. Another way to count 10% in-kind is we have this local town hall meeting. We have participants from 20 participants for 2 hours. Well, that's 2 hours times 20 participants times the public unemployment wage value of what, 120 Danish kroner, 150 Danish kroner per hour. That sums up to what, 200,000 Danish kroner. That's a lot of in-kind contribution. Just make everybody write in a piece of paper, I was there, take a picture, they were there. And this will count in your accounting and auditing at the end of the project. Many ways to reach the budget. So wages, including social costs and overhead for direct participants. You cannot pay non-Nordic Baltic participants anything. You're not even allowed to pay for their travels, but they can have the coffee that you serve. That's fine. You can arrange seminars, you can arrange webinars, workshops, hackathons, courses, summer schools, anything that is relevant to your focus. Can be explain it and explain what kind of feedback you hope to get from it, what kind of output that activity should create, and how this would inform your results. That's the application. There's a link for the de minimis declaration here. With this just gives you what you have to answer. You can also use your national de minimis declaration paper. Probably you have met this declaration paper before in your own language. You can just use your own language form to declare your de minimis freedom. You're laughing, Preben. What are you thinking? We will be able to read the languages of it. We have a timeline. Deadline is in January. On the 7th, we will have another webinar to go more into, once everybody had a chance to look at the budgets and the application portal itself, there will be questions. What do you actually mean by this wording? And we can answer all of that here. We will repeat in much all the necessary detail what we mean. Maybe we have the time for the workshop already, Preben. Sound,
If I'm so optimistic and confident that I'll be in the money, could I start my project already after I have sent in my application, or is cost only applicable from I have received the funding decision?
Yes, when you have the funding decision will be already in March. So we're trying to do this very fast.
Yes,
well, you can start, but you cannot declare. You can have your 10% in February.
Okay.
Yeah. That would probably be fine.
Yeah.
Because it's on your own risk and money until you have a contract.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then I could have 9 months.
And actually, just I think that the steering committee that will approve this funding decision, if let's say the 4 projects are ranked for funding, and 3 of them begin immediately, and 1 has a lot of issues to get started, there is a risk that if there's a 5th project with an equally high rank or relevant rank, that they might be taken out. We have to, fair warning, you cannot wait to start. You have to start. It's mandatory to start by April 1st as the latest. So you have to be ready to start the work. Tommy asks, can non-profit public-owned energy agencies or organizations claim 100% or a maximum of 90%? Well, you can claim 100% if it's within your de minimis room to operate. So if you only ask for 100,000 Norwegian kroner, that can be all of it funded if you didn't receive your full de minimis in the rolling 3 years until now, and in the period that we look for. If you already granted the other de minimis state aid, you add all of that up and look if there is room for more funding. So yes, you can claim. Somebody has to provide the 10% in kind, but it doesn't have to be you. It can be other partners. Probably organizations with their own address, or companies with nice meeting rooms in a central location. They can host meetings or workshops, and that has a value of some sort for food and coffee, and this can be at a reasonable rate can count as in kind. Availability of the technical staff that helps you operate your webinar could count if you needed to count it. Then we have, Then we have the March, the funding decision will be publicized in around the 10th of March. That's the ambition, and the projects will be finalized for consortium agreements. You can start if we believe that your consortium agreement is on the way. But it doesn't make sense if you don't finalize your consortium agreement pretty fast. October is the workshop, and the final hand-in of the final reporting is the last day of November. You're allowed to spend 3 more months to finalize your accounting and submit the final budget reporting, because normally, bills have to arrive first to be paid, to be part of the auditing. You have to do if you are, as the project leader is a research organization, most of them are required to audit anyway by state audits, so we don't need to see your audit. But if you are a private research organization, we need to see the audit. If you're not mandated by law to make one. But you can ask that question again in January if there are any concerns. 80% of the budget will be paid when you are approved and operational in our system. When all the signatures and the contracts have been made, you will be paid upfront 80% of the budget as applied for, so that you have the money in your hand to work, to travel, to pay. Any questions for this? What do you mean, Preben? What kind of partners? Oh, you asked for Anne. Okay. Yeah. Gitte, you have a question?
Yeah, it's a quite short project period. So what are the requirements for mediation and communication? Is it enough to participate in this workshop, or do we have to have seminars in the period?
That's a very good question, actually. It's actually enough to be part of this workshop. But it's unlikely that you will not do something else because there will be activities, and activities will be announced if you need external participants. So this also generates an outward communication, but you're not required to spend money on a web page, folders, flyers, conference participation, unless there is a relevant conference that you are going to present at. But you're not required to have an extensive communication effort. It would be expected that there is a newsletter from your side, from one or more partners will have this in the newsletter. So the communication that would normally happen is expected to happen here also, but it's not, a web page or a logo is excessive. It's not something we ask.
Okay, thank you.
Unless somebody has a logo already in their head and just wants to use it, go ahead. We didn't even make a logo for this call because it's short and fast. Any questions? Yeah, the cow is really cute, isn't it? For some reason, the page doesn't move on. There we go. Does everybody now know what their next step will be? Do you know what you're going to go home and do? Please raise your hand and I will call you. Both of you know if you want to tell us what you're going to do, or if you have questions and need somebody from the audience to help you. So everybody is thinking. Definitely recommend to read the chat, because I think everybody wrote in the chat. And that's very good. And the chat will be made available online as part of this video. I think the chat will then also be there. And answered the question. I'm seeking partners to collaborate on an initial study to identify suitable technologies for small-scale bio and even ethanol production, with the goal of piloting the chosen technology. That's nice. It's definitely in scope. And more people are writing, so please go ahead and write more. This is the contact information to reach Betsy or Anna and me. Don't hold back. We will answer as soon as we see your questions or hear it. If it's a general question that others would benefit from knowing the answer, we will publicize we'll sum up the questions and publicize the answers at some point on the same web page. And so we're about to close this webinar, but we want to share with you some opportunities in 2025 that you should not miss out on. So Betsy, please go ahead. I will just keep sharing.
Oh, sorry. Here we have several other programs that that now are open to also apply on, and it is this one, the Nordic Energy Research Programme. I'm just going to share my screen here, and that is run by Senior Advisor Mai and also Higher Executive Officer Ditte. So if you want to get in touch with them, you can read more about the program here. The program facilitates long-term institutional collaborations to build strategic capacities and networks in the Nordic countries. So you can read more about the different calls here and also the different activities on the call. And if you want to apply, you can do that through this link here, where you can also read more about this type of call. So that was the Nordic Energy Research Mobility Program. And then we also have, if you just, I can open up my PowerPoint here. We also have one called, one call that is called the Nordic Energy Outlooks. And it is this one. One second, sorry. Just have to share the screen here. There. And it is here. And that is run by Senior Advisor Torsten and also Advisor Ola, if you want to get in touch with them. And this program is concerned about the Nordic energy systems. So the call you can also find through the same link as when you are applying for this call in the Bioenergy program. And we use the portal through Nordforsk. Ain't that right, Lisa?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's where you will find it, and it opens in January, so keep an eye out.
Yeah. And then we also have both a conference coming up in January in Luleå in Sweden about the Nordic hydrogen valleys as energy hubs. And maybe you would say a few words about that, Lisa, since you are the main pilot on that program.
So the program has 5 ongoing projects, and then we have several other projects ongoing that are relevant to hydrogen. We have a maritime program. We have the Grant Solutions program with a hydrogen project as part of the funded projects. And we have several joint Nordic-Baltic projects that are also related to biomass, to hydrogen in this case. So this is a conference that both has keynote addresses on when are we getting there, how do we get there fast to have hydrogen in the society, but also has looks more in depth in cross-cutting issues of all the projects, like safety issues, social acceptance issues, planning, local planning, national, regional planning. There are many issues to be addressed. The conference is free to participate in, and it's at the end of January in Luleå. So you sign up using this link, and if you click again, you get the QR code.
Oh, one second. There you got it.
Go ahead and sign up and find a night train or a plane to Luleå and join us. There will also be site visits to the Swim and Hybrid companies. They are the ones making this green steel with hydrogen and biomass and changing the production of steel forever.
We will also have a site visit at Luleå Technical University, and that will be a lab tour coming up.
Yeah.
I think that maybe was it, or was it one last slide, maybe, Lisa?
I think there was one more slide. Oh yes. Oh,
yeah.
This one is a new mapping. There's a report that you should read. It explains how the mapping was done, and then there is a map where you can have a look at Nordic valleys, hydrogen valleys, in planning, in progress, already decided, being built as we speak, sizes, where are they? So this is a very interactive tool to see what's going on with actual hydrogen projects, worth having a look at. And then, of course, go read the report behind this call.
And if you have questions to the report, you can also contact Torsten, and you can find his info at our webpage. Super.
Yes. Can you see the final slide, Mentimeter slide for the second Mentimeter, Betty? And then we can show that, and then we can finish.
I just have to find it 1 second here. Yeah, we have got some new answers. I think 2 more answers here. There, and then I'm going to share my screen. Here.
I'm wondering if it's possible in Mentimeter to just keep it open, because that would allow others to engage after the fact, so to speak. Should we try and see if that works, or if this is a life hack for Mentimeter users?
I don't know if Menti brings that function, but if it does, of course, and then we can type in this this picture into the PowerPoint before we publish it, I think.
Yes, let's see
that might
if
be
we
a
can keep it open
solution.
for some hours. We will see what happens. That could be interesting. So just nice to know thing about Mentimeter, actually. Anyway, any last questions? Because otherwise we will end the webinar and you will find it online in a few hours, I guess, maybe tomorrow.
I have a question more.
Yes.
Can you be in more than one consortium for this call?
Yes. Yes. If you are the project leader for 2 proposals, well, the same organization can be project leaders have for several proposals, because they probably have a lot of staff in a university, and they would then compete against each other. But if the same person is the project leader for several proposals, you probably need to have a good explanation for that, because you're asking us to prioritize between 2. Maybe you couldn't decide, but you have to be aware that you're also cheating one of your partnerships by working on 2 partnerships at the same time.
As a normal partner, just not.
Yeah, that's totally fine. It is actually fully possible to have 2 applications where you're both project leader for both of them and have both funded. We have an example of that in the Hydrogen Valleys Energy Hub program. 2 of the proposals have the same project leader. So it's totally possible. Any more questions before we say goodbye? Can I ask everybody to put on their video, and we will see if there is, just because I like to see all pictures at the same time. I don't know if I can have a screenshot of it. Apparently I cannot have a screenshot of everybody in the same screen. That's probably the way Teams work. But I will take the picture anyway. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you in the segment.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ses Gitte.